softwood. Then you can get different blades that we talked about for ripping or cross cutting. Usually we do a general purpose one here. You don't really change from that. What you might see on YouTube quite a lot and very useful is mortise and tenons, or the tenon. So you can, different machines, I'm telling you what you can't do here, it's not that helpful for you. So say if you're making a tenon on the end of here, you can lower that blade. Unfortunately, you can lower that down to whatever you need, say 5mm above the table, and you can use a sliding table. What makes this so much more efficient than, say, the radial arm saw or the crosscut saw is, say your tenon's going to be something like that. It's not square all the way around. So for those ones, yeah, you can raise the blade up. You can pass along the top here and you can pass along the top here. Then you'd have to rejig that because that's a different length, isn't it? And that's usually what your tenon's going to be like. But with the table saw, because you're working from the bottom, all I need to do is if this guard wasn't here, which we're not allowed to take off, you can run that over the top, your stop here. So I can run that over the top and do all four sides, and then you've got a perfect shoulder all the way around, and that's the neat bit that you really see. And either you can take the rest of that off by backing up and taking the rest out on the blade, or you take it to the bandsaw and get your cheeks done. And so you've got your really nice shoulder all the way around. For this one, we've got extraction on the hood here, which is attached to the riving knife.
How far can you take that blade down? You take that blade right down to like 2 mil or
Well, in normal ones here, but here it's going to hit off the end of here, so you can only get it down to where I had it, which was, I don't know, 10-15mm.
Right.
So yeah, only for health and safety reasons, we've got the blade, which is good for extraction on the top, and some saws are really good with the blade. Well, the extraction will just hover above it and sit here, and you can have something that's separate, but these raise and lower at the same time. This is a riving knife at the back here. Does anyone know what that purpose is for?
That shows it doesn't just keep it apart.
That's it, yeah. So it's just ever so slightly thinner than the blade itself, so it can pass through. But when you've got particularly large pieces of wood, say you're passing that through, and it's not being seasoned particularly well, when you cut through that, there's three options I guess, that this wood can do. It can stay perfectly parallel when you're pushing that wood through, that you'll have your kerf mark will just be perfectly parallel when you pass it through. Then it's nice and dry and it's not going to move much. It might open up like a banana, or the worst option is it closes in on itself. And if you don't have the riving knife, which you see a lot on YouTube clips when they're showing you close-ups, it's not there, it's going to pinch that black blade back off the blade and ping it out. And easy for me to say, certain situations, it will be like an arrow. So something like that, if that closes in itself, pinched it back, it will fire out there. And if you're standing in the wrong place, which is right in front of the blade, it'll get you right in there.
You're right in the Henry's.
Or if you're standing off to the side, it's going to hit that bench, so someone working behind you might get it as well. So it has happened, but very, very rare. And you do get different tensions in the wood. This looks all very straight grained. This is sapele, but you get all the different woods that you can see over there. Gnarly bits of knots in there. They'll be under different tensions and compressions, and so that's why we need to have the riving knife here. We need to be more safer and versatile. So that's the point of that riving knife, that it stops it from binding on the back there. But it's a great way. Sometimes people make up jigs that you can, if you can get rid of all that and you're in your workshop or a different place, you can get jigs, right angle jigs that set up and clamp it, and you can run it over the top. You can create grooves in there, tenons, all sorts of things. we've got a fence at the side here, and then we've got a ruler along there, so we're just looking at this piece here, up against this metal piece. At the moment, it's set to, there's 300 millimeters there, so at the moment, I've sat that at 300 millimeters, locked that off, so the distance from here to this side of the blade is 300 millimeters. One of the dangers is to use that as a stop going this way. So at the moment, I would cut that through, that would be sitting here. And of course, that dimension from here to here is longer than that direction. Does that make sense? So if that does pivot whilst it's slotted in here, it's going to be too long, and something's going to be giving. This is going at 100 miles per hour, so again, that will spit it out here, and it will spit it out at an awkward angle. It might bend the blade and be really quite nasty. So even thin bits of wood, so even something like that, in fact, probably more danger of that because it's lighter, it's more likely to rattle and bounce, and it could pivot, and once it pivots, it's going to spit out here. So the way to get round that is to have it clearance. I can bring that out the way, lock that off, and I can now treat that as a 300mm stop. I can cut the way all the way through there and push that away with a push stick, and I can get the next one, push it along there, and eventually I'll come down to, I can't hold on to that anymore. So that's a good way of having a stop. But also you've got this side as well. I could set that to 300mm, lock that off, just get this out of the way so the wood can pass underneath it. I can take it straight off the end there, and I can pass that, cut that 300, get the next piece, put it up against the stop. So that's your two ways. You can either use that stop, but you have to bring it back, and use this as a stop.
I take it isn't as bad if you do it that way because you've
Correct.
Or just
you've
bang out.
still got more than that side that you've got on this side.
Yeah, when you cut through, it might not be 100% 90 degrees, your offcut here, so you might have to, once your offcut is off, you have to pick it up, move that stop out of the way, recut that to make sure it is 90 degrees, and then put it up to a stop again. And again, for the people who haven't used that, that's too much information just to take in, but as long as you've got a general idea of what it's capable of and what it can do. So that's for cross-cutting. Usually you'll need to get this out of the way for ripping. So that is 65mm. Let's say I want to take it down to 50mm wide. What I usually say is I go a mil over, so I'm going to go to 51mm. So by the time I cut that, it's going to have a rough edge along here. So I'll either take that to the planer, or I'll plane or hand plane or sand that rough saw mark out. So usually do a mil over. This fence goes about halfway up here. So you've got a good in feed, and by the time you're out feed, you're pushing it out, there's still enough surface area to push through there. I'll usually help with getting this out of the way. And this can slide off as well. That can come straight off the pole here. Okay, so it's best not to stand in the way here. It's best to stand just over one side.
Why did you take that away altogether, Johnny, and just didn't like it?
Yeah. Why did I take it out of the way completely?
Aye.
Just to get it out of my way, because I want to stand here.
Right, got you.
And it was kind of, yeah, it was kind of in my way. I'd have to be stretching over it.
Right.
I think it would just be a little bit awkward. So I guess this is why people don't like it when they first come to it, because it's quite a powerful machine. You have to think of a few things at the same time. You have to push it into the fence, making sure there's no gaps. There is a little gap in there, but that's just because of the wood. On that side, a little bit better, but not amazingly. But the point is not to have it off to here. And I do see it quite often that people will forget to look at the gap there, or they'll push it through like that as well. So it needs to be up against the fence, parallel along there, with no gaps. At the moment, if I put a push stick in the end here, it's just going to lift up. So it's about a case of having a push stick in your hand, pushing it into the fence and feeding it through. By the time you get to here, that's when you can get the hook over the end there. Now I'll be feeding it right through. With really thin slithers, they can rattle in there as well, which is why a good idea to push them all the way through. Can you get the instruction, David? See the G button up on the wall there. So you've got your red line, typical tight. Timbers away from the blade. Don't want too much on show here, so I think that's too high. I think that's better. Move the timber away. That way. Here, okay. Correct, yeah, which is good.